Usually I do longer intros when I talk about a new episode coming up. I'm just going to read one line from Forbes magazine. If you have customers, you need this book, period. This book we're talking about is by Brittany Hodak, and she is speaking at the next SOI Summit. There, I can't go much tighter than that as an intro. I have a lot more to talk about with you, Brittany, but welcome to the show. And the book, first off, I should say, is Creating Superfans. So I have so many questions and so many areas I want to talk about, but just start out by talking about what are superfans and why they're important.
Awesome. Well, hey, Jeff, thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm really looking forward to the summit and excited for our combo today. So I define a superfan as a customer or stakeholder who is so delighted by their experience that they become an enthusiastic advocate. And I know that's a long definition, but there's 3 parts that are important. Number 1, customer or stakeholder. So we're talking about people who actually have a transactional relationship or history with your brand, because we all know as customers, when we're looking for a referral, when we want to know from somebody like, should I work with this business or not? Should I go to this place or not? We want somebody who actually has firsthand experience. So that's the first part. The second part is that they are delighted by their experience. So it wasn't just neutral. It wasn't just transactional. It was something that they remember as being great. And then finally, the third part, they become an enthusiastic advocate, meaning they are saying your name in places that you don't have the privilege of being invited to. So maybe that's a DM, maybe that's a conversation with friends, but they're able to advocate for you in a space where you would not otherwise have a voice. And the reason that's important is because we know that when customers are given our name by someone they trust, not only are they more likely to check us out, but they are more likely to have a better experience because they've been preconditioned to expect that, to spend more money, and they are statistically much more likely to tell other people after their visit. So these are customers who are quite literally creating more customers just because they like us and want to tell their friends. And so that is that's why they matter, because if we could all have customers that are creating more customers for us, it's easy to imagine what that means for the future of our businesses.
And that's particularly important for convenience stores. Convenience stores, we talk about this a lot. About 28% of in-store sales are what's called food service, which is technically anything that you'd sell in a restaurant. So it's prepared food, but it also includes coffee made on site and fountain beverages, etc. But that's really the model over the last however many years with social media, etc., where you need super fans. And what happens with restaurants, I'm an example, is if for some reason you have a bad experience, you never tell anybody at the restaurant. You never, but then you get home and those fingers go wild on your keyboard. The opposite is the super fan, where I imagine you tell people at the restaurant, you tell people at the store, and then you amplify it online, and it is way, way more believable because it's your truth and it's your experience.
Yeah. And the really interesting thing is, yes, you have a bad experience and then you're like, I'm not going to go back. But what I think is even more dangerous, even worse than those people who have a terrible experience and then go tell everybody about it. Like, at least when that happens, as the restaurant, you have the opportunity to reach out and make it right, even if you're the last to know, even if you saw somebody talking about it on social media. But what I think is much more dangerous are the people who just kind of disappear. They come once and they're like, not for me. Or they come once, had a great experience, came back, ordered the same thing, had an okay experience. And now they're like, well, I wonder which one of those was the exception and which one was the rule. And so they just choose someone else next time. And that indifference or that apathy, I think, is actually much more dangerous to brands because it's invisible. It's very difficult to track before it happens. And then people just leave. And so you don't know why they're not coming back. And because people don't tell you that they left and don't tell you why, you are left trying to figure it out. And you're like, well, do I need to compete more on prices? Do I need a different variety? And you're trying all of these things to solve the problem when oftentimes it wasn't a product mix or a pricing problem at all. It was just a service problem.
And then you go in that death spiral where, oh, maybe they just need more coupons. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
all of a sudden your margin goes to nothing.
Maybe I need to spend more on TV ads or radio ads. And yeah, you just go into, as you said, a death spiral.
So, let's stay away from death spirals. I brought it down a notch, and you're a positive person. How did you started out with the music connection, where that was your journey into seeing about superfans, just your experience in the music industry. What was it about radio? What was it about music that you just discovered there's this different element that was unique, that spoke to you?
So I always wanted to work in the music industry when I was a kid. I thought it was so fascinating. I thought it was so exciting. I knew I wasn't going to be a rock star or a pop star, but I thought maybe I could be a manager or a publicist or work at a label. And so when I was 16, I got my first job at a radio station and I was the mascot. I was Sting the Bee. I had this like bumblebee costume that I would wear at every remote that we would go out into the community and broadcast live from like a car dealership or a furniture store or whatever. And it was so fascinating because I got to see people who just loved our station. They would say, "We heard you on the radio and we drove 2 hours to come take our picture with the DJ or pose with the bee or try to get a free CD or concert tickets or whatever it was." And I was so fascinated by that connection that people felt with our station, even though they just listened to us on the radio. And so that really got me thinking about, why do we love the things that we love? Why do we feel so connected to some things and yet disconnected from other things? And so I started to study that even as a high schooler. And then in college, I went on to work at several record companies during college and after I graduated. And then after several years of working for Sony and Universal, I started my own company called the Superfan Company, where I was doing just that. I was saying, how do we create more superfans? How do we connect more deeply with the fans that have the potential to help grow our careers? So I worked alongside legends, people like Kiss and Dolly Parton, to help them better understand their fan bases. I worked with, at the time, rising stars like Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber to help them better connect with people that would go on to become their super fans. And the thing that I saw again and again and again, and it was true when I was 17 years old at the radio station, and it's true today, decades later, super fandom is a two-way street. If you want your fans to love you, you have to love them back. You've got to invite them into the story, because super fans are created at the intersection of your story and theirs. And the big aha moment for me was when I realized this isn't just true for pop stars. This is true for every single brand on the planet. And when I started to see that connection, when I started to realize this is true of consumer packaged goods brands, this is true of restaurants, this is true of convenience stores, like it's literally every single vertical, that's when I really started to study it. Like I went back to school, I got a master's degree in marketing and consumer behavior to like really study the psychology behind the decision making. And that's when this all started to come into focus, where I said, if you're not connecting your story to theirs, it's very difficult for them to ever feel a connection that moves you beyond the commodity zone, right? They're going to see you as a commodity provider, as a means to an end, as a quick solution, as one on a menu of many things. But when you can connect your story to theirs, that's when they see you as that category of one. That's when they see you as so intrinsically tied to their identity that something feels off if they don't swing by and get that coffee in the morning, if they don't stop after work to get their scratch offs. Like, you are a part of their story. And so that's what creating superfans to me is all about. That's some of what we're going to be talking about on stage at Next, to really help people understand how to make that connection, how to become a part of the identity of those customers, so that, again, is it important that they're coming back? Absolutely. But it's even more important that they're telling their friends, because those customers are actively creating more customers for you all the time.
I wasn't really thinking, we have a deep connection to music in our industry. People love it. They're connected to it. We play it in our stores, but music radio is about routine and daily rituals, and so are convenience stores. So there's a lot of alignment in thinking about daily existence. You know, the average person goes to a convenience store roughly every other day, based on transaction count. So filling up your gas tank, doing whatever, getting that cup of coffee today, having that conversation, then having a great experience and sharing it, it is that whole listening to the radio or listening to your favorite songs. It brightens your day. You can't really define it, but it just makes you happy.
Yeah, and the thing that's really unique about it is, there are some experiences that feel very one to one, even though they're one to many. Social media is that way. Like, it feels like, in your algorithm, you're looking at it, it feels like this is just for me, in a way that if you're watching like a broadcast on TV, it doesn't. And that was always what was sort of special about radio was, oh, you're listening to it in your car, you're listening to it in your headphones. Like, it feels like it's just to you. And in so many ways, the convenience store transaction is the same, because there's oftentimes only one person at the store. Maybe you're the only person in the store. So it still feels very one to one, in a way that, a mall does not have that same impact or does not have that same feeling.
You might have a job at Nax if you want one. You're a great advocate for our industry. And also, you mentioned Dolly Parton. She is opening truck stops this summer. So she's going to be part of our industry, and we'll have to reach out to you and say, hey, let's go visit Dolly and talk about how she's enjoying our industry.
I love that. One of the things that I love about Dolly, obviously, she is such a force. And I live in Tennessee now. And so to see how much love and reverence there is for her because of how much she has done for, obviously, East Tennessee, where she's from, but really the entire state. And I mean, if we're honest, like the whole world, right? But one of the things that I love so much about Dolly is that she has fans of every age who adore her for completely different things and know her for different things. So my kids know Dolly beyond, knowing that like mom has worked with Dolly, and, there's like some pictures and stuff that they've seen and some stories that they've seen, because I've had the privilege of getting to work with her a bunch of times now over the years. But they know her as the book lady, because she started a project called Imagination Library, and every single child who's born in the United States and in probably like 30 different countries across the world now, Dolly will send you a book every single month until your 5th birthday. And the point of that was her father and many people in her family were illiterate. And she said, I'm going to do something to honor my dad. I want to make sure that no child doesn't learn to read. And she took a bet and said, I bet if a kid gets 60 books before they even start school, they're going to find somebody who's going to be able to read that book to them, or they're going to fall in love with books in a way that says, let me go to school and learn how to read. And so now it's like hundreds of millions of books, I think, that she has distributed for free with partners all across the world. And it's something like a few million books every single month that go out, which is obviously incredible. But they're like, if you talk to a kid under the age of like 15 years old, they have like they can't name a single song. They know nothing about her career. They're just like, oh yeah, the book lady. And there's people who, know her for the theme parks, and obviously for the music and the acting and the activism and all of the things. And so I think it's going to be really cool a few years from now when there are people who just know her as like the gas station lady, right? They're going to be like, oh yeah, like the gas station lady. And it just speaks to the brilliance and the spark that she brings to everything that she does.
And it's all about the branding. And for all of those, she is authentic, which obviously you have to be if you're going to create Superfans. You can't say, well, let's trick them one more day. It has to be the authentic story that people believe, that they feel in their heart every day. And I'm sure you've as part of talking and studying Superfans, these are people that get brand tattoos and things like that. And that's not when you've made it, when somebody has ink of you on their body. Now, that's not super prevalent in our industry, but you see it more than other industries.
Well, and you're right. And certainly there are the standout brands in the industry that people are very likely tattooing. But the other really interesting thing, and in high volume, high transaction, high customer count businesses, which you guys are very much at like the top of all of those, if you're going to, draw it out, you have people constantly entering at every point. And it takes an emotional intelligence and awareness on behalf of the team working in the convenience store to meet a customer where they're at and help them on that journey, and not assume because we're so-and-so, things. It's funny. I was telling some of the Nax team this on a call, and I was like, I almost feel like I can't can't say this on stage because it sounds fake, but it's not. It's totally real. A couple weeks ago, I was in Florida. I was driving from, I don't know, like Orlando to Jacksonville, maybe somewhere. I was like driving between two events. And I had stopped at a Buc-ee's. And as I walked in, I hear a woman who had just paid for whatever at the cashier. And she said, do you guys have restrooms? Like, is there a restroom I could use here? And, I'm like
Maybe.
smiling to myself because obviously, that's kind of like one of the main things that people usually say about Buc-ee's, but she had no idea. And the cashier wasn't like, didn't make a snide remark and wasn't like, yeah, we're kind of known for that or anything. She was like, yeah, of course. Just if you walk back past where you got the brisket and make a left, like they're at the back of the store. And it's such a great reminder that it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how famous you are. Like, there's always going to be somebody at a concert that's like, I've not heard any of these songs, or I've heard one song on the radio because I'm here with a friend. Or this was just like something going on and I walked by and it looked fun. And so what the great brands do, whether it's a personal brand like an artist or a brand with, thousands of locations that's in the convenience industry, you've got to care individually about every customer to meet them where they're at and leave them better than you found them. And if that is the ethos that you have, if that is the, how do I take this experience that has been placed with me one-to-one or one to a few and leave these people better than I found them, whether it's their first visit or their 500th visit, that is how you build superfans, by eliminating the opportunity for apathy to creep in because you took what would have maybe been a neutral touch point and turned it into a positive one by leaving those people better than you found them. That is how you like systematically empower every single person on your team to create superfans.
So you had mentioned algorithms a couple of minutes ago. So just a quick transition. Probably the two things that people talk about most in retail right now is customer experience and AI. And on their surface, they feel very different. Customer service is about people and having that one-on-one experience. AI, to a lot of people, is like, let's eliminate things. Let's make things more efficient. Is there a way to reconcile customer experience and AI or anything else that does add efficiencies? And how might that play out for retail?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question, Jeff, because I'm so passionate about it. Yes, there is absolutely a way to reconcile it. And this sounds like an oversimplification, but it's really true. Like, this is the litmus test that I encourage people to use when they're deciding about any AI deployment at any point, whether it's entirely customer facing, whether it's behind the scenes. It's as simple as this. Number one, does this make things easier or more convenient for my customers? And if the answer is yes, then you can very likely deploy that solution and they will be happy. If the answer is no, then you move on to the second question. And the second question is does this free up enough time or capacity with my team or with my resources to where it's like a neutral for my customers, but the overall net is a positive because of the efficiencies that are created and what that means. So for instance, the team is able to do this new thing that's going to be a net additive because of this technology. And if the answer to that question is no, then in my opinion, that is not ready for prime time. And even if it looks like there is a positive ROI short term, I think there will be a negative ROI long term because people will get frustrated. And there's so much now where people are trying to oversimplify and say, customers hate AI or customers love AI. And I think the truth is much more nuanced, which is they don't love or hate AI. They love when things are easy. They love when things feel simple. They love when things feel personalized. And if you can do that with technology, they will love that. But if you can't, they won't. And so I think it's all about asking, where can technology make friction disappear? And if technology adds another layer of friction, then that's a bad use case. And I just wrote an entire newsletter about this a couple of weeks ago, where I juxtaposed a few experiences on the customer service side with AI over the past few weeks of, here was a terrible example, here is a great example, here are some sort of like okay wins. But I think too often people make blanket decisions like in a silo that say we're going to do X because that's what we're going to do, not thinking about how it impacts everyone along the value chain, including the team members, including the first time customers, including the long time customers. And we've got to ask ourselves, like, how does this ultimately net out for them? Because if we don't, it's probably not worth the hiccups for a very, very, very long time.
So there's also, as you build superfans, I would imagine it's also pretty easy to lose superfans. Is there one or two things that you would say, don't do this? You can risk taking a superfan that is a super advocate and make that superfan into a super detractor.
That is absolutely a risk, because once we feel an emotional connection to a brand, whether we have that physical tattoo or not, we feel like, oh, they love me too. I love them and they love me too. There's a reciprocity that we perceive, even if it's not actually there. And so the moment any one person makes us feel jilted or slighted, we take that as almost like a visceral denial and extrapolate it to mean like the whole brand hates me, right? One of the things that I'll talk about on stage is this idea of everyone on your team being what I call the acting chief of experience, meaning they represent the whole brand. Like, whether if you are a multi-unit brand location, that one 19-year-old kid who does something represents the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people working across tens of thousands of locations to that customer, right? Like, that might as well have been like the founder and CEO of your brand as far as they are concerned. So yes, it is very important that your team, especially because in convenience, oftentimes, obviously, we have people who maybe haven't been on the job very long. Maybe there's high turnover. Maybe there's lower level training than we would have liked before we had to like put them in the store by themselves. We've got to make them aware of this dynamic to be able to say, we never want to make someone hate our brand, but at the same time, there are things that are non-negotiable in terms of what we will and what we will not accept from a customer. So I don't mean in any way to suggest that an employee should be subject to like abuse or ridicule, or feeling like a customer deserves like special treatment, because that's not what I'm saying at all. But it is a really interesting dynamic that you can have somebody who loves a brand until the moment they hate the brand, and then they go like hard left the other direction. So
Right.
that's definitely something. And that one of the good things now is, like, a lot of times when that happens, somebody's trying to go scorched earth, the first thing they do is go online, right? And they go to social media. So the really good news is that now you've got teams that can do social listening at scale, and it's pretty easy to monitor for alerts and to find things like that, and to hopefully like smooth things over. And oftentimes the service recovery makes that person even happier than they were before the mistake happened.
Yeah, and we've all been that way, where it's just like something didn't go right, and you reach out however you reach out, and they make it better, and it's just, oh wow, I'm on double on board now.
Yeah.
And it's just a one of the things that in retail is you're eventually going to run out of people if you only have transactions. But if you can develop customers that are loyal, and then they become super fans where they tell more customers, then you have that virtuous cycle, and you can kind of repeat that, and then you got a good thing going. And the other part I would imagine you'll talk about is, how do you keep that going by storytelling, either internally or externally, so that people on your team can find creative ways to delight people that may necessarily not be on the here's 3 things you should do, but I just found something clever. I helped somebody that is from New Jersey fill up their gas tank, something like that.
Yeah.
They're not used to that because it's full serve. Something little like that. Moments of kindness go a long ways today. It's not just good for business; it's good for everybody in terms of how do people just feel better about life.
Yeah. And, I think part of that sort of virtuous cycle is the more you can create an environment where you do have the people that are looking to create those moments, it's going to be easier to hire great people. who then are going to be more excited about doing it because they're wired for it. They're going to enjoy the environment more, which means they're going to stay longer. And so there really are so many benefits. And I've heard so many fun stories of people doing like bingo cards for their team, where it would be something like that, like, oh, like you get your stamp on helped fill up somebody from New Jersey's gas tank, or you had to argue with the 19-year-old that nope, this is really the year that makes you 21 and you can't buy beer, like whatever it is. So like all the things that are going to happen. And then once they complete that bingo card, like what do they get? What do they win? So finding ways to keep it light, keep it fun, and to let your teammates know these are the things that are likely going to happen. Because the other thing that's unique to retail, but really unique to convenience, is that it can feel isolating when you have a team member who's there maybe by themselves, maybe with only one other person, maybe they only see the manager, occasionally. You've got to find a way to have that built-in sense of camaraderie there so that it doesn't feel isolating. And I think that's one of the things that, as anybody who's listening to this, who's worked in the industry knows, like when you get it right, it's so valuable because of, the average turnover time is going to go down. People are going to stay longer, be more engaged, and help train others when they stay a little longer.
And probably helps to wear a mascot outfit, because I'm sure people tell Sting the Bee things that they wouldn't tell somebody that's on the other side of the register.
I always say, it's so funny. In every job, obviously I'm incredibly biased because I was a mascot, but anytime I'm interviewing somebody, I always ask like, hey, were you ever a mascot? And it's because it's funny. It's one of those things you don't realize how many people have done it, even if it was just for a little while for their high school game. Or the other day, a friend of mine who I've been friends with for a long time, we didn't know that we both used to be mascots, and we were talking about it. And he was like, yeah, I was the line cook, but a couple days a week, I would have to like wear the costume. And there's just something about having that experience of wearing that costume that changes your perspective. So yeah, feel free, anybody listening, if you want to ask people whether or not they've ever worn a mascot costume. And then I am absolutely on board with everybody creating a mascot for their brand at some point.
We have an article in Axe Magazine about mascots in the last couple months. So
I cannot wait to read it.
Break that out
right away. Yeah.
So want to thank you, Brittany. We don't want to necessarily give away the secret sauce of what you'll talk about. I'm just going to modify how I started by saying, if you have customers, you need to be at this session, and you need to hear what Brittany has to say at the next State of the Industry Summit. It's April 14th through 16th in Schaumburg, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. But it's going to set you up for this next year, and all the things are going on in retail, customer experience, and just how do you reset or adjust over the next couple of years and continue to grow your business and hopefully have as many super fans as possible. So thank you once again for joining us today, Brittany.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Thanks for listening.
And thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.